Hey, if you have like 7 hours, you could watch that Ten Commandments movie from like the 50s. It might not be 7 hours, it's 4 hours. We've cut parts of it to just show clips of it. And here's why I really think it's fascinating. In the 50s and still today, this story mattered. This story mattered that it was the biggest thing that Hollywood had going on, to the point of when this movie came out, it was basically like as like Avatar. I don't know, there's 3 of those now. I don't know if we care about them, but imagine the biggest movie you've seen. That's what the Ten Commandments was. And because it focuses on a story that's in Scripture that outside of the Jesus story is one of the most important stories in the Bible, and we're hanging out with the main character of that story for the next couple weeks, and his name is Moses. And today, I just want to ask you this question. How do you deal with fear? Like when fear shows up in your life, what starts to happen? And the Israelites are in this spot where they're trapped and fear overtakes them, and they kind of have some responses. How do you deal with fear? I would just like to tell you that I don't normally do great with fear. A fun thing I've been doing lately is I'm getting up in the morning. I'm trying to get up like 5:45-ish because I'm an old man. And I go downstairs, and the first thing I do is I turn on my TV to like a YouTube, like lo-fi beat landscape, kind of like this. I don't know, I would turn it to some random like oasis-like place. You hear that? You hear the calm? And I'm trying to like project calm thoughts and relaxed thoughts on myself. And I sit down, I'm reading my Bible, and things are going great, and I don't have any fear in my life. Until usually right at 7:45 a.m., because 7:45 a.m., this thought creeps into my head every morning. Hey, maybe today is the day that my kids won't get on the bus in time at 8 o'clock. And all of a sudden, this relaxed energy that I have goes out the window. It's just chaos. And I'm like yelling at people, Oakley, socks, get your socks. Backpack, it's in the garage, get your backpack. Hey, put on your shoes, Bear, Rylan. I'm yelling at them, go, go, go. We have to go, we have to go. We brush your teeth, comb your hair. You don't have underwear on yet? What are you doing? Like, we have to go right now. And it's chaos. And I push them all out the door, and I fall on the ground, usually. And here's what's crazy about fear. Like when fear shows up, usually reality stops working. Because I just like to tell you this. Guess how many times my kids have missed the bus? 0 times. 0 times. But here's what's crazy. Don't clap for that. Like, I'm a psycho person. What's crazy is I'm convinced that this is going to be the one. And as soon as fear starts creeping up, you tend to forget everything that had previously happened. And this is what's going on with the Israelites. They're in front of this sea. They've just been rescued. We talked last week about Moses, and God talks to him via a burning bush. And he has to go back to Egypt to rescue his people. And he goes and he talks to Pharaoh, and the video just talked about it. Pharaoh's like, nah, I don't know if I want to let people go. And God goes, bet. And then God sends a bunch of plagues. And eventually, Pharaoh lets the people go. And it's not just like a few people. It's roughly like 1 million people are leaving. And they've been walking for a few days. And what's crazy in this story is they said that basically what happens is God sends a pillar of clouds in the day to follow. And then at night, it's a pillar of fire that these people are following. So just imagine how aware you are of God's power. If you just watch God bring all these plagues upon the Egyptians to rescue you, and as you've been walking the last 3 days, there's a column of fire. A column, like God is clearly something you're thinking about and something you're noticing. And yet as soon as Pharaoh shows up, as soon as the chariots show up, instantly right back into fear. Right back into fear. And here's what I think happens for most of us. When we get afraid, we tend to forget what God has already done. We push it away. We forget the good things that God has already done, and we start living in this fearful mindset. And so here's what I want to do. I want to be as practical as I can. For the next few minutes, I want to talk about some responses to fear that a lot of us probably have. You may have it. I have them. The Israelites for sure had them. And then I want to talk about what Moses said to those responses and some practical things that we could do to kind of let go of the fear that tends to overcome us. And so as you're listening today, I'm just going to ask you practically, think about where you are fearful. Try to come up with the thing that you're holding on to, the fear that you have. And so I'm going to flip back and forth in Exodus between chapter 14, verses 10 through 12, and then 13 through 14. If you're a Bible person, and you have one, if you're a Bible app person, you can follow along. So it says, the Israelites looked up, and there were Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified, and they cried out to God. And here's the first thing that fear does. What fear does is fear convinces you to create worst case scenarios. I don't know if this is a thing that you do when you're afraid. You all of a sudden create worst case scenarios. Here's what the Egyptians did. They said this to Moses. Hey, was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us out to the desert to die? I guess as soon as they're afraid, oh, you just brought us out here to kill us? What's the deal? We could have just stayed back home? You could have killed us back then? And they build up this scenario in their brain. They haven't even asked if there's a solution. They don't even know what the plan is. They're instantly just terrified. And let me tell you, I'm a worst case scenario kind of guy. The reason I'm terrified every 7:45 a.m. is if my kids miss the bus, then they're gonna get kicked out of school. And they're like 10 and 8, and if they get kicked out of school, they gotta live on their own, on the streets. And if they live on the streets, they're gonna have to sell drugs. And if they have to sell drugs, I'm gonna have to buy the drugs because I'm their dad, and I can't let them just have no money. And then now I work at a church. Like I'm gonna get fired. I'm buying my kids drugs that they're selling to me. Like you see what's going on here? Like you've created this crazy scenario in your head. And sure, that's silly, that's dumb, but you do this every single day. Hey, I'm terrified to ask this girl to prom because if she says no, I will be single the rest of my life. Never again. No one will ever say yes to me, ever. If I don't get this job, I'll never get a job. If I don't pass this test, I'll never pass a test. And when we're afraid, we start thinking irrationally, and we start worst case scenarioing over and over and over again. I love what Moses says. He says this in verse 13. He just answered them, hey, do not be afraid. And let me dig into this statement a little bit, because do not be afraid seems pretty simple and like obvious. Here's what I know you're not doing when you're worst case scenarioing. You're not bringing God into that worst case scenario. Like here's the reality. If I was like, hey, my kids are gonna sell drugs. They're not gonna sell drugs. Hey, I believe that there is a God that offers grace if you're late. I believe that there's a God that watches over the teachers and the people in their life. I believe that God is big enough to overcome this small little scenario. And as soon as you put God back in that worst case scenario, the worst case scenario seems pretty silly. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And if we want to give up fear, the word that we're going to latch onto today is this idea, you're going to have to surrender it. You're going to have to let it go. And I think if you want to be someone that's not afraid, you got to practice surrendering worst case scenarios. And here's my practical thought on this. You're going to have a hard time doing this by yourself. Hopefully what you get better at doing is noticing when you're spiraling, like, oh no, this isn't real. And what I would encourage you to do when you're in that mode is like text someone. Maybe text the person that's not in this room. It's the coach out there. Like, hey, please pray for me. Hey, help me bring God back into this worst case scenario. Do you have a person in your life that when you're doing the spiral thing kind of can like snap you back to reality? I think most of us probably do, and if you don't, I would look for someone. I would track someone down, and your coach would love to be that person for you. Oftentimes when we're afraid, what we do is we build worst case scenarios. The second thing that happens when we're afraid is we do this. We tend to run back to comfort. We run back to what's easy. This is the craziest line in this whole Exodus. That can't be true, but this one is a crazy line. It says this. You brought us to the desert to die. Didn't we say when you were in Egypt, leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than die in the desert. Let me just be clear what they're saying. It would be better if we went back to being slaves, like slaves, where they were killing us and murdering us and we worked nonstop. It would be better if we went back to that setup. And that seems silly and dumb for Israelites, but the reality is I think a lot of us tend to do this. We tend to drift back to what's comfortable because it's easier. I know there's people here that you're in like a dating relationship with someone who's manipulative, and you need to leave. You know you need to leave. But leaving's scary because then you're by yourself. And so instead of leaving, instead of having that hard conversation, you'd rather just stay in this relationship that sucks. There's someone here who, like, man, the fear is so overwhelming in you that you're just chasing it. You're chasing some way to deal with it. And for you, it's just, hey, it's every night when your parents are asleep, you get into their medicine cabinet. And you're like aware that this can't be your future. But the idea of dealing with your thoughts and processing that with someone else is terrifying, so you just rather go back to this easy thing, this easy high, this easy fix. And Moses, he speaks to the Israelites the same thing that I hope that he would speak to me and he would speak to you. And he says this, stand firm. When you want to run back to what's comfortable, Moses encouraged, could you just stand firm in the obedience you said yes to? I say this a lot, and you've probably heard it before. I think following Jesus was never easier. It's just always better. And sometimes you may have to make a decision to stand firm with a decision that's difficult, to live in that space. I'm not sure the thing you're afraid of. I think you know it, though. How could you stand firm? I think the last thing we tend to do when we're afraid is we tend to control the narrative. I think a lot of us probably do that with our phone. We're gonna put something out there. If people think this about me, then they won't ask me questions about that. If I get out in front of the problem, if I say all these things, or maybe we do it by we blame other people. That's what the Israelites are doing. They go, why did you take us out of Egypt? They're blaming Moses. This is me in the morning blaming my 6-year-old and 8-year-old for not getting ready on time. That's absurd behavior. I'm an adult. I could have clearly just started this process 30 minutes earlier and we'd been fine. But I'm waiting till the last moment and I'm terrified and now I'm blaming them and we got issues all over the place. And it's chaotic trying to control the narrative, trying to get out in front of things. And Moses says to these Israelites, he says this, he just says, be still. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. I wonder if you just slowed down a little bit. If you just slowed down enough to get God back into this picture. I've been kind of joking about this morning routine this whole time. It's like a little funny in hindsight, but a couple days ago, my daughter, I don't even know where we were. We were somewhere else. We were talking about the morning. My oldest daughter, she's Rylan. She just turned 10. We were just talking, and she looks at me and she goes, hey, Dad, I wish you weren't the person that got us ready for school in the morning. She goes, I like when Mom gets us ready for school. She goes, Dad, you stress me out. And after I like chuckled to like play it off like it wasn't a big deal, I've just been thinking about it every day. Because what sucks is when I'm afraid and when you're afraid, we don't look like Jesus. We worst case scenario, we run to what's easy. We try to control the narrative. And when people look at us, they just see fear, they don't see Jesus. And when I pray for our ministry, I pray that this ministry makes an impact, and I pray that people run into us, and I pray that they see Jesus. And I wonder if perhaps they aren't, because too many of us aren't willing to surrender our fear back to God. I want you to go with me for a second back into this place where the Israelites were. They've been walking for a few days. They're right in front of the Red Sea. Their way is blocked and they can't move forward. And they're afraid. What's the thing you're afraid of? What's the conversation you're terrified to have? What's the thing you're afraid to admit? What's the sin that you keep going back to? And I wonder if you have it, if you've caught it in your mind, I wonder if you'd be willing to surrender it. Here's what I love about this scripture. Moses answered them, do not be afraid, stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you'll never see them again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. And you don't need to do the work. I think God is ready to deliver you from the thing that you're afraid of. I'm going to do something a little bit different. I don't know, this might be experiential. This might be, I would love for you to get in this headspace. I want you to picture the thing that you're afraid of. And I want you to believe that if you would just surrender it, God has the ability to deliver you from that fear. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the rest of this Exodus story to you. And I want you to hear the deliverance that God has for the Israelites. And I want you to believe that that could happen for you as well. Let's watch how God shows up. Then the Lord said to Moses, why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground. Then the angel of God, who had been traveling in front of the Israel army, withdrew and also went behind them. The pillar of cloud also moved from in front and stood behind them, between the armies of Egypt and Israel. And then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. And the Egyptians pursued them, and all of Pharaoh's horses and chariots and horsemen followed them into the sea. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and their horsemen." And the Lord swept them into the sea. The water flowed back and covered the chariots and the horsemen, but the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground. That day the Lord saved Israel from the hands of the Egyptians. And when the Israelites saw the mighty hand of the Lord displayed against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord and put their trust in him. I believe in a God who can deliver fearful people. I believe in a God who can deliver worst case scenario people. People who chase comfort, people who control the narrative. I believe in a God who can deliver sinners like you, sinners like me, sinners like the Israelites. What if tonight you'd be willing to just surrender your fears back to God? I'm praying for intentional, I'm praying for humble, and I'm praying for real conversations tonight. I pray for y'all. Dear Heavenly Father, I'm often so quick to be afraid. And when I'm afraid, I'm often so quick to forget all the ways that you've showed up in my life. And I know that when I'm afraid, I don't look like you. Help me surrender my worst case scenarios. Help me surrender my desire to be comfortable. Help me surrender the chaos that I have to shape the narrative. Lord, I pray courage over myself and over every student here, that you can give them the boldness to not be afraid, to stand firm, and to be still. We love you, Jesus. In your name, we're going to say, amen.